Think you can handle all of Gogoryo's legends at once? From Jumong's dragonborn rise to Mishan's bold reforms, Gwanggaeto's empire-stretching conquests to Bojang's last stand, these are the stories you'll devour. Smash that like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Your next royal obsession starts now. What if a king spent more time composing poems in the Yuan court than presiding at home? Was he a traitor, a diplomat, or simply a man who loved art? Meet King Chungson of Goryeo. He bridged two worlds, wearing Mongol robes and Korean hanbok in the same breath, wooing poets and envoys, tightening tribute ties, while trying to preserve Goryeo's dignity. But did his absences and courtly indulgences fuel plots at home? And when loyalties split between scarves and seals, who truly pulled the strings of the throne? What if a king's job was to survive for the next generation? No glory, only bargains. Meet King Chungsuk of Goryeo. He came to the throne with Mongolia's shadow at his back, traded princes for peace, rebuilt temples to stitch a broken realm, and walked a razor-thin line between foreign masters and hungry courtiers. But who whispered in the Khan's ear, and whose young prince boarded the ship at night? Was Chungsuk a cautious savior, or a monarch who sold his people small favors for fragile peace? What if a king kept a crown by hosting the brightest parties, but every banquet bought him only days of peace? Meet King Chunghae of Goryeo. He tried to keep the kingdom breathing, with music, palace renovations, and delicate deals with the yuan. He commissioned dancers, repaired halls, and shuffled officials like cards. But when royal pleasures became political currency, which favors bought loyalty, and which lit the fuse of rebellion, and when exile and return shadowed his throne, whose hand finally closed the book on his story? What happens when a kingdom wants calm more than glory? Meet King Chungmak of Goryeo, the quiet sovereign who wore the crown between storms. He patched broken roads and granaries, fed monks, and funded rituals to give his people hope, and answered UN envoys with measured words. But can ritual and repair save a throne when generals and factional lords whisper in the corridors? Who benefits when the king chooses steadiness over spectacle, and when every small kindness becomes political currency? Whose loyalty can you really trust? What does a crown mean when everyone else pulls the strings? Meet King Chungjung. Installed as a youth while ministers and foreign patrons carved up power, he kept the rituals, paid for temple repairs, and tried tiny fixes to a kingdom frayed by war. But when granaries were restocked and secret lists of appointments circulated, whose names rose and whose fell? Was Chungjung a careful steward, or a stage prop in a palace drama where favors bought fortunes and a whispered word could end a life? What if a king who vowed to cut his country free from empire did it by turning his throne into a courtroom? Meet King Gongmin. He ousted pro-Mongol cliques, seized back stolen lands, and installed a controversial monk reformer to rewrite the rules. But can mercy and terror ride the same horse? When reformers became rulers, nobles woke to empty ledgers and secret prisons. Was Gongmin a savior who dared to remake Goryeo, or a king whose own choices lit the fuse that ended him? And when the palace doors closed in 1374, whose hands finally pulled the crown down? What if a king tried to hold a crumbling realm together, only to be swept aside by the very soldiers he sent to fight? Meet King Yu of Goryeo. Crowned amid assassinations and palace plots, he fought pirates at sea, shuffled ministers at court, and tried to balance Ming diplomacy with homegrown power struggles. But as commanders grew restless and coffers ran dry, whose orders provoked the revolt that unseated him? Was he a failed ruler, a scapegoat for greedy elites, or the last king trying to keep an era from collapsing? The answer lies in midnight councils, ruined harbors, and a single march that changed Korean history. What if a kingdom crowned a child to keep peace, and then tossed him aside when the peace failed? Meet King Chang of Goryeo, a boy king lifted onto the throne while generals rewrote the rules, paraded through ceremonies he barely understood, and watched as swords and seals decided his fate. How long can a crown protect someone who never wore the power behind it? And when the court turned its back, did the boy king die for a cause or for someone else's ambition? What happens when a kingdom hands its crown to a man meant to hold it only until someone stronger arrived? Meet King Gongyang, the last king of Goryeo, placed on the throne by generals, kept alive as a symbol while real power sharpened its knives, and finally cast aside when a new order was ready to be born. Did his presence spare blood by easing the transition, or did it make him a tragic scapegoat for a dynasty that had already died? Follow the final coronation, the hush of secret count, and the single decision that closed a 1,000-year story.